All right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Tactical Debrief. It's me, Josh Ritchie Howard, and I'm joined by the top four placing John Winter Russell. I think officially the best guard specialist, if not the world, then at least North America, with a fantastic run. Oh, what does that mean, John? You said
No, no, no. And
no,
then,
no, no.
you know, Nas and David, and there's a bunch of other people
There's a
doing
bunch
better
of
than me,
yeah.
Garden.
But I think it's also worth noting that you've kind of been on a lot of people's radar for a long time as one of the best players in Canada, someone who's been representing the Guard for a long time. And I think, backing it up at this most recent event just kind of goes to show like how well you've been playing, how well how strong Guard is as well, and just how much we can really do when everything seems to be lining up. So I just want to start with that, John. You went to the WCW and you made top four, only losing to John Lennon, who was also playing guard. What was that whole experience like?
It was pretty surreal. It was pretty exciting because I kind of went into it going, if I go 5-3, I'm pretty happy. I knew there was going to be kind of curveballs thrown at us because they didn't give us a player pack, which meant I practiced a couple games, but I'm not really used to GW terrain, so I was kind of like looking through all the different map layouts, and I'm like, well, they're definitely gonna do 7 or 8 at least for once or twice, because that's what they're going to do 100%. And
Hmm.
then I'm like, and they're probably gonna do two because that's the opposite. And then we probably play, and then there'll be some other mix. Or I thought they were just going to do all 8 layouts,
Yeah, I think
which
I know a lot of people were surprised when they found out. Well, because like they didn't have a player pack at all, right? And you show up and games one and
that's it.
two are on layout seven,
Yeah.
which for people who play a lot of Pride Nexus generally think they look at that and they're like, this is so melee skewed for a lot of like players that a lot of people kind of were expecting that guard was not going to have the performance that people were expecting just because so many guard players were going to get knocked out in the first two rounds.
Yeah, there were definitely a few. I know compatriots of mine that play guard definitely got raffle stomped on I think round 1 or round 2 on that layout. But at the same time, I think like you have to kind of expect that at GW events, so you kind of have to build that into your list or just get lucky, one
Yeah,
or the other.
totally fair. Yeah, you said it a little bit earlier that you were kind of expecting to go like about 5-3, win a couple more games than you lose. What was the experience like as you just kept winning?
Well, yeah, I honestly, it was the minute the minute I won my group, I was like, I can win my group and go 4-4 and be happy.
Hmm.
It was just basically every game I was like, the old cliche of one game at a time. It was literally just that.
Yeah. Was there ever
There was go for it.
Yeah, was there ever a point at which you like had any kind of a mental switch? Just like, wait a second, I expected to have a decent run at this event, but now I'm switching my mindset to I'm trying to become the world champion.
When I think after turn 1 against John Lennon,
Yeah,
I was like, I can see a path where I can win this game.
that's a really cool feeling to have, I have to imagine. Now, I do want to
Yeah.
dig into it a little bit because I know, having talked to Nick Gigello a lot, I know up in the Greater Toronto area, you guys mostly play on WTC terrain. What was it like transitioning from that over to the Games Workshop and Pariah Nexus?
I don't live in Toronto. I live in Montreal.
Oh, okay.
So I live I probably like 6 or 7 hours away from
Mm-hmm.
Nick.
Gotcha.
But we still only play on WTC just because it's a lot more. We have a lot more teams tournament
Mm-hmm.
oriented. Um, the transition was a lot of wow, shooting armies are really good on these boards. Um, and the other one that was kind of weird is getting in my head that when terrain pieces are like fully touching, it counts as one piece of terrain
Mm-hmm.
because that doesn't happen on WCT tables. So there was a few times where I'm like looking at angles and I'm like, this seems really hard to get an angle, but then I remember I can get in this ruin and see completely through the other one.
Mm-hmm.
After it's after those you kind of just like you have a basic game plan and a good understanding of what you're trying to do. And then I'm used to in teams getting kind of like thrown into the scrum, which means you kind of just end up on a map that no one else wants, or end up on a map that your opponent wants, or what have you. So I'm kind of used to looking at maps and kind of going, what can I do easily? What what are going to be problems? I think that helps me a lot. Is I have a relatively good ability to analyze how the matchup is going to look on a certain map relatively quickly, and I think that just comes from playing, as part of my French, a fuckload of games.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's definitely the kind of thing that just comes, the adaptability will come over long periods of time. And I think, when you say going into the scrum for people who don't play a lot of teams and you play 8-man teams, you have like those four players at the end who's like, they're kind of going to get not completely randomly, but sometimes it feels almost random, like who you end up playing, what map you end up playing on. And you're like, yep, okay, well, we're playing a matchup on a map. We're going to figure it out and go from there. So that adaptability has to play a lot into the way that you're building up. But I'm also kind of curious then, because you're playing mostly on WTC terrain. Now you know you're playing on Pariah, but you don't know which terrain layout. How does this affect the list building that you were taking into this event?
Well, 100% honest. The balanced data slate came out, and the I was really happy with the list that I took to Capital City Bloodbath,
Mm-hmm.
and the change to tank commanders and the fact that it was just going to be more shooting lanes. I was like, okay, I have to put a tank commander back in my list. Lame. So I dropped, and then Aquilons came out, and I'm like, okay, I have to put Aquilons in my list. So I have to get rid of a bunch of things from a list that I really like. So I got rid of Creed, an Earthshaker battery, a Kasrkin squad, and, to my great, great sadness, a squad of 10 Rough Riders all hit the floor. And then I got a tank commander and two squads of Aquilons for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know Jugela was saying
Um,
that he wishes he had brought more Rough Riders to this event for WCW. Do you feel like that also would have been good for you?
No. Just because on stuff like layout 2, you can't, like, I suppose you can rapid ingress them, but they're not they're really good because they can cross the 2-inch ruins, which makes them a lot faster on GW than in on WTC. But I was very happy with one, because if I wanted another one, I would just bring it back.
That's fair. Uh, so before we go actually talking about like the list and the games that you were playing at WCW, I kind of want to get some sense on some of the decisions that were made at WCW by the organizers that I've heard mixed opinions on. So the first one, not having a player pack before you get to the event. What are your thoughts on that?
Personally, I don't care.
Okay. Mm,
Like,
fair.
if you want to run your event and you want your run event to be surprise 8 missions, you get to decide that. It's their event and they get to decide. I think it just changes how you prepare for the event. Like, when they said there was no map pack going to be released, I'm like, this is going to be crazy. They're going to do something weird, because that's the only reason you would do that. Because if it was just boring, basic, you know, layout one for 8 rounds on 6 different missions, then they probably would have just done a map pack. They probably would have just released a player pack, but they wanted to do something. I think they had a reflection on trying to, you know, go, oh, this is a shooty meta, so they put the combat list first, and then they put the shooty ones afterwards, which I actually kind of appreciated a little bit, because that means further as you got into the tournament, more you were playing kind of like more standard deployments and more standard missions, which, to be totally honest, I liked doing that later in the tournament rather than getting crazier. There is nothing worse than the last mission in a GT being supply drop. That just sucks.
Yeah. There's a specific call out there to one of the Atlanta TOs who loves round five supply drop, to much to his players' chagrin. But the other major controversy, maybe not controversy, but topic of discussion before WCW was the clock rules being very different. Not enforcing a traditional chess clock, but if you were behind like certain milestones, then the judge could put you on a clock. I'm curious what your thoughts and experiences were with that.
Um, how do Some people will say I play slow. I don't think I play slow. It's that I take a lot of time in my command/movement phase and then try to roll dice real quick.
Hmm.
Um, and when I play against armies that also roll lots of dice, we tend to take a large amount of time. Um, the clock was never an issue. I think they could have just said, I understand what they want to do, and I've played at events where you have clock rules, but also the judge comes up and just goes, "You guys have an extra 20 minutes, add 10 minutes onto each of your clocks." And they do it, and they just say, "We want you to finish the game." And the whole idea is they want everyone to finish the game, but they don't want the clock used as, "Here's a problem, you have 45 minutes to solve the problem,
Hmm.
and if you can't, you lose." Even if you could probably get out of it if you had an hour and 10 minutes,
Yeah.
which I appreciate, because then that gives opportunities for people like Sam Pope and Wesley St. Hines to play ridiculous armies.
Yeah.
That you and yeah, like coming from a place where a lot of the tournaments I play in singles, they're still running almost timings from like ninth edition, so it's like 2.5 2 hour 45-minute rounds, which is way too short in my opinion.
Yeah.
um and you just can't run those lists. It's just not physically possible to move that many models and roll that many dice and have to do it with any semblance of precision.
Yeah.
um so I appreciate the 2 games 4-hour rounds, and I don't know how many times were we put. I think I was put on a clock, like the second clock, like the judge came up and put a clock on our table. I think twice or 3 times, but
Hmm.
no one ever technically, the game never clocked out.
Yeah. One of the concerns that I heard going into it is the possibility of weaponizing the clock, where like especially for armies like say orcs, where you just have like turn one or turn two, you call the wah, and that turn by itself can oftentimes take like 45 minutes plus, right? And then you come up, the judge sees like, oh, you guys are only on round two. Here's a clock, and the orc player is eating up a lot of the clock, and the other player doesn't necessarily have time. Did you ever have any concern of anything like that, or did you ever hear any kind of concerns with that?
I don't have any like specific examples of that actually happening. I
Hmm.
did not hear of or experience, so
That's
I
good.
can't can't comment to it. I can there was definitely at any point, like in any game where I was like worried about any type of like disparity, like I just had my chess clock with me, and I was like, this is to track how much time. It makes it so that when I stand and think and look at the table, you don't think I'm wasting your time.
Yeah.
And I did that a couple times, and a couple times we didn't, and we were still fine. Like, the whole idea was we were there to have fun and play Warhammer. So
Yeah.
I tried to concentrate mostly on that, and I was either lucky or the vast majority of people had that same experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, everything I heard from the event was that people, they really enjoyed their games. Some people got good dice, some people got bad dice. Whatever happened, it was all just really high level, really high quality games the entire time, which I think is fantastic. I just wish there was a little bit better coverage of the event overall for people at home. But
Fair.
yeah,
I got back into Warhammer because of Joe. So
yeah,
the fact that they wouldn't let Joe be there, or maybe Joe could be there, but they didn't want, or whatever it was. I think Joe does. Joe's the best. So
yeah.
yeah, I wish Joe had been able to be there.
Yeah, and for anybody who doesn't know Joe, he runs War Games Live. He goes to all kinds of GTs and big events and helps stream, and really, honestly, I would say is one of the best streamers in the world for, if you want Warhammer content, go check him out for sure. But one of the
one Hundred percent.
you said there that you got back into Warhammer. So what did your Warhammer career look like before you rejoined the hobby?
Oh well, I started when I was, I don't know, 11 or 12, because my best friend, his friend, got a few models. This
Nice.
was third edition, I think. I can't remember. I think it was third edition.
A long time ago.
Um, yeah, and it was pretty. And I played until I was, I don't know, it's like 16, something like that.
Hmm.
Maybe, the getting close to late teens, and then I stopped.
Fair.
And then during the pandemic, when everything started getting back up, but um, we were still kind of stuck at home, YouTube suggested that I watch Joe's stream. And I was like, I remember Warhammer. This was a lot of fun. And I have nothing to do. So I'm going to get back into a hobby that has nothing to do with, my work.
Yeah.
And so it was basically a choice between Guard and Orcs. And I do not regret my decision. I very much like Guard. I think the idea of having just normal humans in a universe where literally you fight hell sometimes is pretty funny.
Yeah, I think that's one of the major draws that a lot of guard players will see when they're playing guard. Is just like the idea of like you're just a guy with your gun, and there's all this horrible stuff out there. Just speaks to a lot of people. But I'm kind of curious then, what was that transition like from you playing as like a casual, playing your garage to actually starting to go to events?
Well, when I got back in, it was kind of like I didn't have any friends that played Warhammer. So my reintroduction into the game was going to tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went, and then when I went to a tournament, like I met people that have like a gaming club and went to the gaming store and picked up some games, and then slowly but surely found out about tournaments that are like an hour away or 2.5 hours away,
Mm-hmm.
and then just started going and playing in tournaments and playing practice games, and and then the ninth edition Guard Codex came out, and I went, holy shit, this is crazy. Because like before that, I was playing. What was I playing? I was playing like the Scion detachments.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a whole lot of fun, but it was just like 3-2s all the time,
Yeah.
right? And Death Riders, Scion detachments and Death Riders was
Nice.
basically what I played.
Yeah.
And then the ninth edition came out, and Kasrkin and Rough Riders and Lehman Russes were all. I'm like, this is bananas, and so that was how I basically started getting closer to winning tournaments, like going 4-1, 5-1
Yeah.
was right after that. Um, never won, never won a GT in ninth, and then 10th came out, and it took a good little while for me to understand kind of like how the game worked.
Mm-hmm.
But then early this year or late last year type of thing, it just clicked.
Yeah. What was that click for you? What was the kind of thing that you feel like you needed to realize in order to get to that next level of gameplay?
I think it was just kind of like it was the getting the right balance of scoring points and removing your opponent's assets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because like there was just a little bit, like if you do a little bit too much on the scoring without removing the right assets, like you don't need to remove that many, but you still need to remove some, because otherwise then you're just bouncing back and forth on scoring.
Yeah.
And removing assets can mean taking them off with rolling dice, or it can mean tying them up or move blocking them. It doesn't
Yeah.
one eh, removing them makes it so that you don't have to deal with them later, but
Yeah.
you and so getting that balance, and once I kind of like found that balance, it was like, okay, I feel comfortable in most games. I feel comfortable that there are, and guard helps because I feel like there are outs in every game you play. I don't feel like I'm ever run into a matchup and go, I can't win this.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the interesting things, so I've been working with David Gaylord, I've actually been getting some coaching from him, and so that's one of the things he says, like there's never or at least in the current iteration of Guard, there's no matchup where we should just get blown out. We have some tougher ones like Biosynctic GSC or like Stormlight Space Wolves, where if they go first, it's a tough game, but we still have the ability to play it. And then the other thing that he said that kind of strikes me as something similar to what you've been saying here is Guard isn't really an army that tables our opponent. Like, we are very capable of doing it if our opponent lets us, but it's
Yes.
a lot more about the idea of we need to disable our opponent's army. It doesn't matter if you have all those tanks in the back line if I'm going to be scoring all the primary because they can't find the right line of sight, right? And I think that's something that it sounds like you found a really good formula for in order to start picking this up. And with that in mind, I actually kind of want to use that to transition to the list that you took to WCW because it sounds like if you have this concept in mind of I need to disable my opponent's army and keep my own scoring alive, I'm kind of curious how you take that philosophy into your list building.
Uh, the you get units that can both steal primary, do secondaries, and do damage,
Hmm.
which aren't very many of them, but there is a lovely unit called the Tempestus Scions attached to a Tempestus Scion command squad, and they do that like nobody's business.
Yep. Yep.
So the list is, well, we'll do the list because it's Gaunt's Ghost because fuck yes.
They're
Um,
good.
three Scion command squads. One of them has a Rod and Grand Strategist because I had 15 points left over. Um, a Platoon command squad with a Mortar and a Flag and a Vox. Leo and a Tank Commander with a Demolisher and double Multi-Melta.
Mm.
And then one Death Corps of Krieg squad to attach to Leo and the Platoon command squad because regardless of what David says, you can still be good at the game and run platoon command squads.
Yeah.
Um, and then you have Chimera, two Taurox Primes, a Kasrkin squad, a Rough Rider squad, two Scout Sentinels, a Rogal Dorn, three five-man Scion squads to attach to all your three command squads, and Regimental Attaches, and then 2 times 10 Aquilons.
Yeah. I mean, it all makes sense to me. The Taurox Primes, I've seen what they can do. If anybody's interested, I'll throw up a link up here somewhere so you can take a look at what Alexander Tepe, who is also someone who's been running these Taurox Prime bombs. But I, I think this is the piece that takes a lot of people by surprise. Because you look at the rest of the list that you brought, and it looks like a lot of good guard stuff. But the Taurox Primes, I think a lot of people don't necessarily know what it does. So what kind of role were they playing for you in your games?
So, um, so there's like two things. One, I run the Death Corps of Krieg army, so all my models are modeled to be Death Corps. So I
Nice.
haven't found a very good way of modeling Death Corps into Catachan jungle fighters.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't play jungle fighters,
Fair.
which most people are like, "What are you doing?" Um, but that's besides the point.
Yeah.
So uh, what it ends up doing is it does the same thing that the jungle fighters do. Is they shoot the primes are faster. They go 15 instead of 13 with move. Um, but then what gets out of them just doesn't steal the objective. It also kills the thing on the objective with almost certainty if it's a skirmishing unit, and will sometimes just kill 6 Terminators by
Yeah.
itself for unknown reasons. Sometimes it'll just kill one. That's kind of like the weird thing of it is it is very much predicated on the number of sixes you roll. But you have to kind of respect the damage it can do if you do get the sixes go off and you do get the wound through. Like I've had them like in my last game against Jesper, the first time I activated into a Vindicator, like I left it on 6 because both my Meltaguns didn't wound with full wound rerolls,
Mm-hmm.
and that'll just happen sometimes, and you just do it. But then what they'll do is if you move a skirmishing unit back onto the objective that they just stole from you, sometimes they'll just kill that unit in Overwatch too.
Yeah.
So you're taxing your opponent to not get onto an objective and then charge onto the objective or shoot you off the objective. And sometimes it goes right and sometimes it goes wrong. So they basically play the same role as the jungle fighters do in the early game, but they are more expensive, but they remove scoring assets at the same time.
Yeah. Now, one of the interesting things as I look at this list is kind of some of the things that are not in here as well. I think a lot of people will look at a lot of guard lists, especially something that's running like a Rogal Dorn and a lot of AP1 in the las guns, and naturally a lot of people think, oh, an Exterminator or a Hellhound in here would be great to make sure that we get to that super crucial AP3, so anything that has an invul is now in that invul, but you don't have those in your list, and I'm kind of curious how what the thought process behind not having these pieces in the list was.
So most of my games is I don't like. I think I even when I was playing against Lennon on stream, you can go see it on the Spanish stream. By the way, I don't even remember what the Spanish stream was
Yeah,
called.
Lavaz de
I think I said,
Horus.
uh,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah,
Um, I think I said out loud, I'm like, I do not want to get into a firefight with you. Like this, it's not in my, it's never really in my game plan to get in a firefight with anybody.
yeah.
I I don't want to, so I don't take like four Lehman Russes and push them all up together in a castle and go fight me. Like it's not how I play the game, and it's not my style because I've seen people play that and I've seen people play that and absolutely crush their opponent, and
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather be a little bit more stable, especially playing singles. Um, so like if I can be very conservative in the early turns, build up CP, and I can use Fields of Fire if I absolutely need it. The Tauroxes are also relatively quick that the Scions can get into a position where if you're not in cover, you're not going to get cover.
Mm-hmm.
So then Fields of Fire with AP5 and AP4 and AP2, but you don't get cover, you don't really need it. And
Sure.
it's like, or if you do need it, then you're like, then I lose Kasrkin and a Chimera to basically get a Hellhound and another scoring piece.
Mm-hmm.
Or I lose like the two Scout Sentinels. And one of the things you kind of need because I don't have the jungle fighters, because the Scions do like the turn two primary denial and damage, is I need something that if I go first, I need to be able to put pressure.
Yeah.
So I kind of like sacrifice my ability for all that AP stacking for ability to play the first turn if I go first.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like the balance I'm trying to strike.
Yeah.
And if all else fails, you just hit them with AP4 Rough Riders in combat and you don't, doesn't matter.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. With that in mind, then, with the Rough Riders and all these Scions in here, what's kind of your priority in terms of how often, like, how many games did you use reinforcements, and what were you mostly trying to use reinforcements on?
Uh Anything where I needed kind of like anything, it was probably Aquilons most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And if it wasn't Aquilons, it was horses. And some of the games where I did Aquilons, it should have been horses.
Fair.
Because especially like the Lennon game, it just should have been. They did so good on turn one. Like I've never had the horse unit do like the exact perfect play that I wanted to. It always does half of what I wanted to. Um, and I just should have brought them back because they were stars. But um, the horses are just there because they're fast,
Yeah.
and they'll they again out skirmish, and that's kind of like what it is. Is like if someone wants to put damage dealers, like that's great. They're gonna bring them out, and I will have to deal with them.
Mm-hmm.
But if I can force them to bring them out, then they bring them out on my terms, and then everything's gravy.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. With this list then altogether, I mean, the rest of it kind of makes sense to me. I think the Death Core of Krieg, as a bodyguard for Lord Solar was a little bit surprising to me. Why did you choose to go with that instead of like a Cadian Brick or Catachan?
I like the res 100%. To be totally honest,
Mm-hmm.
like there were in a couple practice games against like in the mirror. Um, there were even games where I put I put what did I put? I put basically the Scions on the board in the Chimera and put that on my home objective, and then put Solar and the brick to go out onto the expansion objective, so that they could res back onto it.
Yeah.
And you can't take it away with with Aquilons because I have the attaches
Yeah.
that do the no deep strike bubble. And there was a couple, and it's like if you go up against Chaos Knights, the everything else in my army is in the transport or its horses. So all the indirect hats are just going to go into that unit.
Yeah.
And so being able to res models just made it so that the order brick stays intact. And or late game, like I really like playing the 20 Kriegers with the Marshal, but it just doesn't quite fit in the idea of this army list.
Yeah.
But the ability to just kind of like res models back onto an objective and then give them +1 OC is sometimes just bananas.
Yeah.
No, the number of times where I've been like, okay, so they get back onto the objective. That's two more guys that are now OC4 each. Is kind of just, yeah, OC real good.
Yeah.
OC's real good.
I definitely have had times where I'm like, okay, here's some two OC4 guys. Now your war dog does not control the point, and they're just like, what?
Oh yeah,
It's very
no, I
powerful.
definitely had the brick with the flag, like charge 3 Imperial Knights on an objective and take the objective without killing any of the knights.
That's a good one. I like that a lot. Uh,
Mhm.
wow, that's a very powerful thing that I don't think I've ever been able to pull off myself. I'll try and keep that one in mind. With all this, I mean, you're obviously going to the World Championship. Was there any matchups that you were building your list, or any like tech pieces in here that you were specifically like, I'm worried about, these armies being good, and that's why I'm going to make this decision instead? I think the Regimental Attaches is an obvious one.
Yeah, the attaches were basically for the mirror because
Yeah,
I figured I was going to play the mirror a lot.
yeah,
Um, because that just what I figured, and then also like it it kind of like I knew when you're going into like 8 rounds, like I know my screening on round 1 through 3 would probably be like immaculate, and then it would start falling apart. And by the time I got to round 7 or 8, it's like, is there a hole here? I'm like, I don't know. I
I don't
measured it.
know.
And you measure it. If you think you can fit your guys there, this is where I put the models.
Yeah,
I think it's okay for the size. I'm just trying to use all my brain power to figure out how to score points, not really screen anymore.
yeah,
So it just kind of, I knew it meant later on in the games, especially later on, if I had to play in the mirror, I could just go, okay, home objective safe. I can worry about what's in front of me, because that's kind of like always my worry. I feel like anytime I don't get things dropped behind me, like, and I keep the game in front of me, I feel very comfortable
yeah.
playing that game.
I think that's something a lot of guard players realized pretty quickly if they didn't know it already as soon as Aquilons came out. Is if you can get your opponent to just turn around, that that sometimes just kills units, right? Just because if they have to go deal with Aquilons, now that unit it's going to take it goes one turn back, and it's going to take them 2 turns to get back into the game. So you don't
Yeah.
necessarily need to shoot them to death if they are now no longer participating. So I really like that. I really like the idea of like, hey, I know after 8 rounds I'm not going to be thinking as clearly as I was at the beginning of the event. So let's just make this game a little bit easier on ourselves. So makes a lot of sense. But with that in mind, John, let's go ahead and start talking about the games. You played 8 of them. So if there are games that you think are more interesting or worth talking about a little bit more, I'll go ahead and leave this up to you. But the big thing I really want is this is largely an educational channel. So if there's like anything that you think was very teachable in any of your games, I'd really like to try and focus on that if we can.
All right.
Yeah.
So my first game was against the person who was supposed to win the pod according to the
According to
the
Goonhammer.
computer models. The computer models.
Mm.
Michael Mann, who was a fantastic gentleman. He was playing an orc shooting list, and I was very, very jealous because it looked great.
Nice.
Um, I think the biggest thing in this game is one is after I won. I think it was after round 4 or 5. I like saw him again, and he's like, shouldn't have dropped commandos because the army is very susceptible to getting rushed. But if it
Mm,
can get its board position, it has all the damage in the world.
yeah.
Um, so the key was just identifying what the army does, and because I had never played against this particular army, but I looked at it and went, I know exactly what this army wants to do,
Yeah.
and it is basically a bunch of guns that uh, jump in and out of trucks, and the mechs give the buffs to the trucks, and
Mm,
then you shoot out of the firing deck, and then means that also gives you basically access to fall back and shoot. And then you have the stuff coming out of the trucks that use their data sheet rule for the Ludas to re-roll full hit rolls for the big mech with the shock attack gun. And then you have whatever you had 70 grots to deny primary and score objectives and stuff like this.
mm-hmm.
So basically the game plan into this is to look, and we're playing the first mission obviously was layout 7.
Mm-hmm.
We're at the ritual on hammer and anvil.
Woo!
I
Yeah.
don't know what people were thinking, but that's okay. So I basically looked at this and went like, I need to go first would be great, and I went first. And so when I went first, it was use the Scout Sentinels, to go and charge trucks and stick them so they can't get into the firing lane that's across. There's that
Yeah.
one long firing lane crossing. So if I can control that firing lane, then I control the center objective. And if I control the center objective, then I can then jump into where he's going to put all his objectives behind his natural expansion ruin.
Yeah.
And I can control the space beyond the center objective, which means he's not going to deny my primary. And that's basically what happened. He called the wah. He reactive moved the 20 Gretchen to try and move block the horses, which I assumed that's what he was going to do, and then confirmed it because I moved the horses first. Because I went, if you want to move block, I want to know what this move block looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And then I shot the move block, everything but the Gretchen character. What's his name? Zagrog.
Zodrog or something? Yeah.
Zagrog.
Yeah.
Um, and then my horses for the would not be the last time. Actually, would be the last time they rolled a 12, but not the last time they did something amazing.
Yeah.
They rolled a 12 on their charge, so I got to not just charge and kill Zogrog, but then tag a truck and some Ludas that were
Nice.
probably 14 inches away from them.
Wow. That's super powerful coming in right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it sounds like you had like a strike
And
force ready to go to just like hop over the wall. So was it the horses and like the two Taurox Primes or
horses,
yeah.
Scions coming out of primes,
Mm-hmm.
and then a unit of Aquilons drop down,
Nice. Yeah.
and that cleared the screen. Horses with 20 las gunshots still kill Gretchen real good.
Yeah, even when they're at -1 to wound, you're still, you're still winning them on fours with your las guns. It's all
Still
right.
got lethals, baby.
Yep.
Still got lethals.
Nice.
Um, and then basically that was the thing is I was just basically throwing assets away, which means I had board control, denying him some primary. He never denied me primary, and that was the game. So I think the big teachable moment in that is kind of like, I think one of the things that some of the better armies do is they have a very concrete game plan for if they go first, and a very concrete game plan if they go second,
Yeah.
and they build the units and the utility into the army list to be able to execute both those plans.
Yeah.
And that's why I have Scout Sentinels. And a lot of people drop them. At least in a lot of the guard lists I saw, I didn't see a whole lot of Scout Sentinels. I saw a lot of Hydras or like 3 Catachan packages or just a huge number of Lehman Russes, and they were going to do this where you're not passing my damage check, which works sometimes, but if you come
It
up
didn't
against
work in
a
finals.
mid,
Yeah.
that
But, yeah.
happens. Um, and you can do that, but it's not how I play the
Yeah.
game, so I didn't try and do that. So you just I figured out what the list was trying to do, and you know, and we were playing in basically his deployment zone for most of the game.
Yeah, and that means you win against orcs. So
Yeah,
yeah, works out.
exactly.
Yeah. Next, I think it looks like you played up against Thousand Suns. So I guess the first question is how many Mutalisks was he running? Because the rest of the list kind of auto-populates. Two?
Two,
Okay, yes. Makes sense.
and this was Alex Fowler,
Hmm.
who this was an awesome game. We exchanged Discord handles after
Nice.
the game, and we will definitely be playing some TTS games. I think, and I'd seen him on stream because he finished, I think, fourth at LGT
That sounds right. Yeah.
or something like that.
Very good.
Yeah,
Either way, yeah.
yeah, what, whatever it was. And this game was very much back and forth because, again, it was on layout 7, so no one can expose. And he was basically, jump a disc sorcerer out, doombolt a tank commander, shoot the tank commander so he can doombolt it next turn and kill it without it getting shot on death.
Yep.
And he set up that turn perfectly and then rolled a 1 on his doombolt into 1 mortal wound and
Oh
didn't kill
no.
the tank commander. And then the tank commander killed the Brubrick squad back, which basically took him off primary, which took him kind of out of the game. It would have been like down to the last point had that not happened.
Yeah,
So he was
man.
kind of it's that's the hardest point because if you're going to finish really well at a super major, I don't care what anyone says,
There is
you
luck.
just have to get lucky
Yeah.
sometimes. And so I don't know if I would have won that game had he executed that play with had the dice been on his side for that one. Like in any game, there were other instances of dice. Like for example, in this instance, my 10 riders did 3 damage to a Mutalith, 4 damage.
Yeah, it
Like it,
happens.
yeah. I've had them do 0 to a Mutalith. I've had them kill Canis Rex from full.
Yep.
And you go into it, and sometimes you're just gambling.
Yeah. That's how I feel about
Um,
tank commanders these days too, because they're D6 damage. It's like, okay, am I gonna full kill this knight or am I going to kill two guardsmen? You don't know.
yeah,
Yeah.
100%. I still don't like the tank commander, but he makes some matchups much easier.
Yeah.
And the thing is he's independent, right? Like it's either you have a tank commander or you have to pay for like a Lehman Russ battle tank and an exterminator package. And
Yeah.
ideally you have a hellhound with those three and they run around a little castle. And I'm not very good at doing all the vehicle shenanigans. I'm much better with infantry and horses, so I
Fair.
try and stay away from that.
Makes sense.
So it was a fantastic game. It was
Nice.
great, but like that game came down to literally that die roll. And had that happened, then it was already a close game. I can't remember what the final score was, but it was super close, and that would have made it like to the last point, to the last secondary,
Yeah.
and
And those are the
that
best games
that
anyway.
yeah,
But
100%.
yeah. Nice. Yeah, I mean sometimes it just happens. I had a game like that this last weekend where it's just like, well, dice said no, it happens. And then the next one looks like you had a very close game going up against Lucas Bernard.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this would have been the first of the three French nationals that I played.
nice.
Which means this would have been that means in the 8 games that I played at WCW, I played 3 of them in French.
Nice. Yeah, that was gonna be my question. Yeah, because I know you're French Canadian. Yeah,
Uh, Not quite, but
not
I
quite.
do live in
Okay,
Montreal.
fair enough.
It's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take it. I'm happy to be. I've been adopted
That's good. That's good.
into
Yeah.
so that I guess that counts. So I played this game in French, yeah, and it was a nail biter. It came literally down to like there were so many little points, like him failing a 7 to not tag a transport, then me rolling like a 4 on a charge to not be able to tag another one of his transports, so it got to come around and kill me off primary,
Hmm.
and then me leaving a transport on 1 wound, so he ended up killing all of Leo's brick, and then him not killing a Scion squad, so the Scion squad ended up stealing the natural expansion objective on my turn 5 to burn. and the
Ooh.
burn won the game.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like too many back and forth. Like it, you know, host is real hard for my list because I don't have like if you have Leman Rest battle tanks, that matchup gets easier because of the amount of blast and full rerolls you can get, and you can knock down a lot of stuff. I have considerably less blast than a lot of the other battle tank armies.
Yeah.
So this one was just a nail biter. It was literally like no one scored primary until I went, okay, I think I can have enough resources to burn at the end of the game. And I'm ahead 4 points on secondaries. As
Yeah.
long as I keep my 4 point lead on secondaries and we both burn and hold, then I win.
Wow.
And that's what happened.
Yeah. I'm curious then, because he's obviously playing Genestealers. Were there any like really crucial moments where he's rolling a cold ambush roll one way or another, and something either did or didn't come back?
No, I don't. I didn't. Don't try and kill anything.
You just leaving like one guy
Why? If
over
you
here.
kill them, they come back.
Yeah.
Don't. No, I think I killed the. No, I kill. I think the big one was he got the 10 man brick of bombs, but I
Mm-hmm.
just made it so that he had to ingress it to so his 20 man didn't get charged
Mm-hmm.
by Kasrkin and had to get tied up. So he
Mm-hmm.
ingressed it, and that was on the opposite side of the board of where my Dorn and Prime was and where I was playing. Like I was just trying to keep him off that objective. So the
Mm-hmm.
minute he did this, I was just like, all of you, I'm leaving all of you alone. You are no longer part of my gameplay.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that's definitely something that a lot of guard players in particular struggle with the first couple of times they play into GSC is you can just charge a lot of their stuff in melee and they are not leaving because they don't do very much damage in melee. They are basically guardsmen in melee, which means they're not going to kill 10 guardsmen in return. So, really, really good being able to identify that. There is also another really important interaction that I've learned about the Host of Ascension matchup because they have the one CP strat to like pick something up after you've shot it.
Mm-hmm.
The was the Aquilon shooting in the movement phase something that you were actually looking to use, or is that something that just kind of naturally just came up?
Yeah, it was more like the equivalent shooting in the movement phase was more to drop units down to like 2 models and then
Mm-hmm.
leave them alone.
Yeah,
So by the end of the game, I think he had like a truck with literally 4 flamer acolytes in it
yeah.
in 3 squads. So like 1-1-2.
That's really funny.
Um, which meant that like each of them has to pass a battle shock test,
Yeah,
and you don't get to like they don't come they're not coming back to full strength, which means trying to take the me off objectives isn't happening. It just
yeah,
got really scrappy at the end, and I
yeah,
was just like, I'm not killing that because I don't want the chance that it comes back.
yeah. That's really smart, really heads up play. And I mean, it looks like a very close game, right? A 4 point difference
It
coming
was
through.
a
So,
nail biter down to the end. Like it, like again, like same thing. Like I think we both played at the same level. I think, and I got whatever it was,
yeah,
whether that's a better card draw or one decision point better or one mistake or one dice roll.
yeah,
It was an equally skilled game, and I just got either lucky or good enough to
yeah.
come out on top of that particular game. I think if we play it over 10 times, it's 5-5.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you've had two fantastic games in rounds 2 and 3 already, just like against fantastic
Uh,
opponents, yeah. Or
don't.
three straight
I
games, yeah.
hope. I hope you're ready for 6 more.
I'm ready. I'm ready because we have one more, the last game in your groups where we play up against Tyranids with a Vanguard onslaught.
This list was ravaging our group. Everybody was afraid to play the big bad Harridan.
Okay. Oh, it had a Harridan?
It had a
What?
Harridan. Yeah,
That's
you got
crazy.
to open
Okay.
the list. It was like a Broodlord and 10 Genestealers, 2 squads of 5 Genestealers, like 2 Neuro Lictors, 2 Lictors, a big Warrior Brick, a Neuro Tyrant, a Harridan, Death Leaper, and Biovore. I think that sounds about right. That sounds
That's
about enough Tyranid stuff.
yeah. And is it
Um,
how do you say their name? Is it Amy?
Amy,
Amy. Yeah.
Amy.
Because I know
Uh,
looking at Amy, they're, because we had the stat check healer, right? Which doesn't tell us the whole story,
yeah.
but definitely one of the like the lower elo players to make it to round four undefeated. So I was a little bit surprised to see that, and I did not see that it was a Harridan.
No, no, she was terrorizing everybody. She played someone from Western Canada the round before and absolutely destroyed him.
Hmm.
Like, because the Harridan just comes on and goes, Magnus, what? Bye.
Yeah, I mean, wow, that's crazy. But anyway, so tell us about how this game and how you overcame the Harridan.
So, I guess, again, like, this is the point of understanding what the army does,
Yeah.
right? And so the reason that she plays it in Vanguard is you have the 1 CP strat to bring something on as if it was a turn before.
Hmm.
So because it's an aircraft, she can pay 1 CP and it comes on the board turn one.
Yeah. It's pretty
So
good.
then you have 2d6 plus 12 shots at 10, 3, 3, plus 1 to wound, shooting anything on the board. And that's basically what she did, was she just put it on the board and started picking up things, and people were like, ah, while you have, you know, 1,400 points of a Tyranid armor running at you at the same time.
Yeah.
So that I knew that's the game plan. The game plan of this army is to hold board control while the Harridan just kills, because it's the only shooting asset she has
Hmm.
in the army.
Yeah.
And it was smoke and mirrors. So, and it was one of the things that helped me. I think that this was layout two. Yeah,
Yeah.
layout two. Um, and so trying to hide 10 Genestealers with a Broodlord and what is it, 750 millimeter bases on the Warriors
Hmm.
from long range guns is a little difficult unless you want to pile it all behind your home objective, which then means you don't really have board control. So we were deploying, she was deploying, and she deployed the Warriors, and I was like, because I think it was Crucible, I basically put the Dorn on the as close to midboard as I could in the corner of the triangle, and went, I can move 13 and I will see those Warriors and I will shoot them turn one if I get turn one.
Yeah.
So she smoked and mirrors them away, which I was like, perfect. This is all going to plan. um, and the whole idea was that same thing. If I go first, I have to take board control because I need to get to a point where I can. Because this was the only game where I strat reserved the tank commander
Mm.
because it was just going to get picked up and then not shoot on death from the Harridan, but I could bring it in and at least get it so that if the Harridan killed it, I was in range and had line of sight to targets.
Yeah.
Um, and so she deployed in the little corner like a Neurolictor and 5 Genestealers and 5 Genestealers. And this was on Purge. So I went, this is great. Horses, go. Horses killed a Neurolictor, killed 4 Genestealers or 3 Genestealers. And the Kasrkin blew forward and killed 4 Genestealers. So I got my kill. And then I left 2 units on one model each for
Yeah.
next turn for kill more.
That's pretty good.
That's how you play Purge as guard, because you normally give up kill more like it's going out of business.
Yeah, we do.
Um, so that was real good. Um, and then basically you staged everything forward, push the Dorn forward, push the Sentinel out on one of the flanks and then on the other flank, and put a Taurox on the middle objective full. So now basically her whole board control front line has been taken away, and I put 10 horses within then striking distance of her home objective. So she has to deal with it. The Harridan comes in, it kills the Sentinel, and miraculously leaves a Taurox Prime on 1 wound.
Nice.
Jeep's real good.
Yeah.
10 wounds and damage 3. Sometimes you just only put 9.
Yeah.
It
That works.
happens.
Yeah. How did the
Um,
Harridan like end up moving on this board?
so she just dropped it basically behind her home objective so she could fly along the her backboard edge,
Mm-hmm.
and she actually had Raveners in her army, so she was able to pick up Raveners every turn and then place them down, basically creating a space where the Harridan was then going to fly. So I can drop
Oh,
Aquilons to make it so it flies off the board.
that's
She
smart.
definitely plays this model, this army, like a lot, and has a lot of like reflections behind it, and you can see it because she
Yeah.
was tabling people.
Yeah.
Um, so that was the thing. So I wasn't going to. So I was like, so I don't get to just play the game of you don't only come on the board twice or maybe three times.
Mm-hmm.
That sucks. So that means I had to kill it. Lame. So basically, then turn to Aquilons drop down, throw a grenade onto the Harridan. The Dorn shoots the long range guns. The Sentinel that's left, and the Chimera that's left shoot their hunt. No, the Chimera didn't because it was in the combat. The Sentinel shot its like las cannon hunter killer. The and that put it at like half wounds type of thing. It's got
Mm-hmm.
30 wounds, so you just have to get it down, right?
Yeah.
It's like I'm like you can try and kill the Dorn with it, but then you're probably not killing it. And I have banked enough CP for the lovely combination of -1 to hit and -1 damage.
Yep.
And that was sufficient. And so in that same turn, she brought out her Broodlord and Genestealers to deal with um, the horses,
Mm-hmm.
which she did. I wasn't expecting them to survive this. But then the Scions and the Taurox Prime came out and killed killed 9 Genestealers, and then killed the Broodlord and the other Genestealer in Overwatch when they moved towards the Scions in her turn, which then meant that there was a nice little place for my tank commander to come on turn 2
Mm-hmm.
or turn 2, or yeah, turn 3, and then that's when the Harridan dropped, and after that it meant the Aquilons basically blocked out the rest of the board. Her warriors that had been put into strat reserve came in her back corner, and that was the only place she could place them.
Yep.
And that was it. It's like the army works really well if you get board control and don't have long range damage to deal with the Harridan.
Yeah.
And I had just enough of all of it.
Nice. Yeah.
Once the Broodlord and the Genestealer went down, and once the Harridan went down, it was cleanup, and that was it.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. I've definitely found that like Vanguard doesn't have a lot of damage, and so as long as you can just like keep them back, it's just the game kind of plays itself.
And they're it's paper.
Yeah.
Like there's no 5 up field, no plane. They're mostly playing Genestealers and Warriors and Raveners that
If you can see them,
don't
you
really
can
have
kill them.
saves.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Makes a lot of sense.
super efficient.
Well, with that, I mean, you got yourself out of Group 4-0. That means you're going to be in the top cut. You're going to be playing to potentially be world champion. And so, I mean, over the first 2 days, what was a what's kind of like the camaraderie like actually? Because I know you've talked about a couple of the other Canadian players that you talked to, some of the other guard players. Like, who were you hanging out with between and after rounds?
So I basically went to dinner with the most of the other Canadian players that were coming from Quebec.
Mm-hmm.
And but honestly, like the minute I was like out of my group and I won my group, I'm like, I started hanging out and started making fun of Thousand Suns players and had um, and then Scary came up and Scary's like, go to bed, drink water and go to bed.
Yeah,
You need to sleep. You need to win tomorrow. Sleep. And I was like, okay, Ridvan, I'm not really get up. I'm coming with you. And he had me get up and walk me to the elevator.
that's so funny.
So I didn't do that much hanging out. I did a lot of
Yeah,
playing really good games, having dinner, and going, oh my god, I am mentally exhausted.
yeah.
And then sleeping, and then waking up and feeling
Doing it
refreshed.
again.
So
Nice.
thanks, Scary. You're the
Thanks,
best.
Scary. Yeah, Scary's great. So with that, then let's go ahead and talk about the first time you actually hit the guard mirror when you're playing up against Jack Murphy in the first
Yeah,
round of the top cut.
Jack was great. We played Burden of Trust. Yeah, it was the first time I had ever played Burden of Trust.
I hate that mission, but yeah.
Uh, I don't
Yeah.
know. It's the only time I've
Yeah.
played it. I doubt I will ever. I don't think I'll play it again because we don't play it in teams, and it's not part of any map, any player pack that I've ever seen up here. So,
Yeah.
and they'll change it probably. I assume they'll change. Maybe I will. Maybe they'll change it in the next mission pack, but I don't
Yeah, we'll see.
know. I don't know. This is a GW map that doesn't make any sense to me. You can kind of like hold objectives, but only with like three models, and you were playing the guard mirror, which means if you're not on the center, then the Aquilons are just going to take the objective off of you. So it was a plan of put something on the back objective, put something on the front of the objective. You can shoot the thing on the front of the objective off, and I'll still hold it,
Hmm.
and I will try and deny you primary. This was the first game where the Kasrkin went in and did their absolute thing. I got first turn, and they went in, threw a grenade, killed his Taurox full of his Kasrkin, and then melt a mind and did 6 mortal wounds to his one of his two Rogal Dorns.
Wow.
And then because of where the Taurox placed, he had to place it on the terrain. So then my Chimera that had just dumped out the Kasrkin got to kill 6 of his Kasrkin back.
That's a pretty good turn one.
Solid,
Yeah.
super solid.
Yeah.
Um, and then I basically that game was just kind of like back and forth. Because I had the attaches meant his Aquilons were dropping to kind of like move block my Rough Riders,
Cool. Yeah.
and my Aquilons were dropping in the middle of his entire kind of like army, just picking things off and scoring secondaries. And in the end, that kind of slowly won the attrition. The Rogal, the Dorn that got Meltamined, ended up dying to. Did it ever get shot? No, I get shot by Scions once and did like 6 damage or something like that. But it basically got Meltamine grenaded twice, punched with a power fist once, and then died to a Quillon grenade.
Sounds like a great life for a Rogaldorn crew.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was not. It was good. It was like clear. Like Jack was a great opponent. He was like, "I've seen you on stream before." I'm like, "If you say so, boss, I believe you."
I saw you in chat. I
Um,
remember.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was like cool, and it was just kind of like I think I played the guard mirror enough that it was. I think it was just I understood like what
Yeah.
you need to do in the guard mirror and what you don't need to do, and Jack played it really well, but like didn't really understand like the even like just the kind of like the pace you have to do in the guard mirror to make sure that you're ahead on points, and
Yeah.
how important like that initial kind of like getting board control to score secondaries is.
How much of an advantage did you feel you had? Because y from what I've seen from Jack's list, it was a fairly standard double thorn list, whereas the list that you're playing is something I don't think I've ever seen another guard player play before. How much of an advantage do you think you got from that?
I think I got a little I think I got a mix. I think in some games the Scions got too respected,
Mm-hmm.
and in other games the Scions got disrespected.
And then they died.
Um, and then they found out.
Yeah.
Um, I think it always helps. Um, I think it always helps, especially to have at least like parts of what you do not be something that someone has a whole lot of reps into. Um, that comes kind of from the ability because we have I don't know how many fucking
Too
80
many.
data sheets to choose from,
Yeah.
with all the Forge World stuff. So uh, I like it. I think it puts people into a instance where they have to make a decision in a situation that they've never been in before, which is definitely an advantage.
Yeah. Did you feel like you had an advantage specifically into Jack with that in mind?
No, because I think one of the things that you have to like realize in the guard mirror is who outshoots who, and then if you outshoot, you have to push because you have to go. This is my mid board, and you can't kill me
Hmm.
as quickly as I can kill you. Um, and he didn't get there. He played like we played very much like on the sides and like in the little corners
Hmm.
and like Aquilon's in and around his deployment zone,
Hmm.
which is where I want to play the game and where my army wants to play the game,
Yeah.
and his army wants to put Dorn's like ideally like two on the middle objective staring down everybody and go, you're not moving me from here.
Yeah. Makes sense.
And he just and we had a good talk afterwards, and he basically he's like what it's something along the lines of what could I have done, and like you're the in this mission going second, and the different armies, you're the beatdown. You're the world leaders player in this matchup. You
Yeah.
have to push.
Yeah, I'm glad you phrased it that way. That's the way I always phrase it too. I never was a Magic the Gathering player, but I had a lot of people who would always talk Magic the Gathering around me. So yeah, sometimes you just have to be like, "This is it. We
Yeah,
have to go." Sometimes it's as simple as we have identical lists, and I went first. I have to go. You know,
yeah, 100%.
yeah. But it makes sense. So you end up getting it looks like a fairly controlled win based on the score. Uh, and then after that, you have another one of my least favorite missions where you end up playing on Terraform, going up against the Sisters list.
First time I ever played Terraform too. Don't play it up here either.
I wish I could say the
Um,
same. I hate it.
I talked to two judges before to make sure I understood exactly how this mission worked.
Hmm.
And this was another nail biter. This one was on the French stream, which is I think it's called French Wargaming, or yeah,
Sounds right.
French
Yeah.
Wargaming on Twitch. They're really cool. They're like super entertaining. We had an amazing game. So this would have been my third game in French against a French national, beating an undefeated French player. So,
Nice.
um, yeah, no, not the sure most of the French contingent wasn't super happy with me at the end of this,
I know there's
but
like
this was an
some tension between French
no,
nationals
no,
and the
no, no,
Quebec.
no.
Well, like
It's
not
a joke.
sometimes it's just like. But anyway, they're Parisians.
Yeah. So this was a nail biter. This was very similar to the GSC game
Yeah.
where like it just was like throwing it. The big parts of this game is how to not get tilted when your very early initial plans go absolutely wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I had von Matern. He put out Celestine, I think, to score area denial, I think, or something along those lines, or
Okay.
cleanse or
Yeah.
something. So I was like, "You're giving Celestine turn one. I will take both her lives right now."
Yeah.
And the horses, for the only time in this tournament, let me down, and they failed a. I think I rolled a 5 into a 5 on a 6-inch charge,
Oh
or
no.
a 4 into a 4 on a 5-inch charge. I think it actually might have been a 4 into a 4.
Yeah.
I can't remember. It was one of those two, and either of them is unacceptable.
Yeah.
And the big problem with that was the horses. The plan was to swing the horses around, and then and the back end of the horses were going to go touch an objective and block Morvenn Val's access for coming in from Strat Reserve to see a
Ooh.
tank commander.
Yeah.
And so that didn't happen. So then Morvenn Val came in and aced the tank commander, and the tank commander did 0 damage on Overwatch and 0 damage on
Oh
shootback.
no. Oh, everything's going wrong. Wow.
So this is where the learnable moment is. You are not out of the game
Yeah.
because something goes bad. Um, because then late game, because then this is where the Scions were underestimated,
Hmm.
and the one Scion squad coming out of it, Taurox, killed all 3 Paragon suits.
Wow. I didn't think they would be able to do that.
Well, while they weren't on an objective.
I definitely did not think that was gonna be in the cards, but wow.
But yeah, and you full rerolls the wound is a hell of a drug.
Yeah.
Um, and at the same time, I was able to put th three scions with little guns and the flag on an objective,
Mm-hmm.
or four, which means I take that objective away because scions with flags are OC2, real good. OC, real good.
Real good.
Um, and then and then it got real scrappy from there,
Yeah.
like real scrappy, like to the point where kind of like, um, uh, he didn't want to kill Aquilons to have them come back.
Mm-hmm.
So I gave them +2 OC and desperate escaped them through Morvenval onto his objective for 6 OC and
Nice.
stole an objective once. And then he went, well, I didn't want to kill him. And he's like, do I have to kill them now? And just kept shooting like 3 bolt pistols into him to try and just kill like 1 or
Yep.
2 to just reduce the OC. And then Junith and some Sacrosants were surrounding a Taurox, and he needed to kill it so they could pile back onto the objective. And they left it on 1 wound, which meant he didn't score primary again on that turn.
Yeah.
Like, it was so many like little things. I didn't get an Aquilon squad back because it battle shocked. Had it battle shocked, I would have desperate escaped through a castigator and rezzed it in my turn,
Yeah.
or tried at least.
Tried. Yeah.
I had so much CP, I was ready to CP reroll that.
Yeah.
Um, but I think, yeah, the big thing is like things are gonna go not the way you want, and that doesn't mean you're out of the game. You just have to make sure you stick to your game plan and try and adapt to what's going on and play to your outs.
Yeah.
Um,
I guess one of the big things there that I think a lot of players, myself included, kind of struggle with is identifying i- identifying how you need to change your game plan when it crumbles that badly. Was there anything like as soon as like the tank commander died, where you're like, okay, here's the new game plan, or is that something you just kind of went over the course of the game? It's like, okay, well, I can find a couple points here, I can find a couple points here. Oh wait, oh my gosh, I found enough points to win, or was it building a new game plan from the start?
well, the game plan was basically like it was very clear the minute that Vol came in on one side, like he was going to play that as his strong side and
Mm-hmm.
try and push towards the corner of my deployment zone or towards my home objective. So my job was to make him stand on that objective and still not score primary.
Mm-hmm.
So throw
Yeah.
things at him, and the plan from the beginning was to take him off of that objective continuously, so I just had to do that with a lot less resources. And then he needed to make good decisions. Sorry, he needed to either make bad decisions or worse decisions depending on like the because I think if I'd lost 2 Aquilons to desperate escape, I don't take that objective back.
Yeah.
So I'm gambling, he's gambling.
Yeah.
We're now both just gambling.
Yeah.
And so his decision to not kill them so I didn't get 10 of them back, probably a good decision. That's what you want to do against Aquilons. You don't want, it's the same thing against GSC. You don't want to give them free units.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you don't kill enough of them, they still can get enough OC to, because you're sisters and you don't have that much OC.
Yeah. And just yeah, makes a lot of sense. And it ends up being another nail biter, 59 to
Oh
53
yeah,
at the end of it. So
absolutely. Same thing. Like
yeah.
this could have gone either way. It went both ways, like 3 times in the game.
Nice. Those are
100%.
so
Like
fun.
at a point where like I think he was into his charge phase or the end of his shooting phase, and he's like, I didn't fall this shit back, and he had already shot like everything around it, and he was like, wow, that's just stupid. Good for me. And you just like you get so into it, and I had plenty of those moments. Like I have so many moments where I'm like, did I drop ghosts?
Yeah, where are they? Yeah.
But that's where I got a really good trick actually for ghosts. Is I've started uh, bringing a dice tray, and when I pick up ghosts, I put them in the dice tray,
I like that.
so I can't start rolling my shooting phase until I get the ghosts out of the dice tray. And I've never forgotten ghosts since then.
That's a
So
good trick. I like that. One of the
pro
tricks that
tip.
I do is I'll take ghosts and I'll just like I'll pick them up and I'll set them on their side like right in front of me wherever I'm normally playing. So then I'll look down to like take a look at the board and be like, oh, there's these models on their sides. Oh, okay, let's move ghosts. But yeah, I like those little tricks in order to make sure we play the game right. And
Yeah.
then after that, we got the Battle of the Johns. In the
Oh
top
my.
four, we play up against John Lennon. And before we get into it, I know there's a point at which he drops Tempestus Scions with Kurovs, and let me know when we get to that because I think you guys played that wrong.
We
But
definitely played that wrong. We wrote
okay,
each other afterwards, and we played that 100% wrong.
okay,
And
cool, yeah,
I was so in the game that I forgot because even like earlier in the tournament, I was like, yeah, Vic doesn't work against reinforcements.
yeah,
And I was so in the game that he just said that, and I went, yeah, yeah, of course. And
yeah.
I was
Okay, cool.
because
I
I
just
was looking at the no, no, no,
yeah,
and this goes to the point where even people who play Warhammer incessantly and as their job as John do, we everyone just sometimes get rules interactions wrong
yeah,
because they're and we hit like we wrote each other. I think like a day after or 2 days after, and he was like, "I got this. I think I got this wrong." I'm like, "Yeah, you definitely got this wrong." I thought about it like the next day,
yeah,
but we said we were playing like this, and we said it, and
yeah,
that's okay. It's
yeah.
whatever.
As long as everybody at the table agrees to the rules, like
Yeah, yeah.
you're playing with the same
We were
information.
playing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's all good.
So for
I should
anyone,
have
go ahead.
anyway. I should have brought back horses anyway, and it shouldn't have been
Shouldn't have been
a
an
thing.
issue.
Had I shouldn't have been an issue. I should have brought back the
Yeah,
horses on turn one, and had I done that, it would have never come up.
yeah. So real quick, for anybody who is watching and doesn't know what the context was, Vect auras or the Lord of the Sea aura does not affect reinforcements because of an FAQ in relation to Ursula Creed, where it says, "Can Ursula Creed like discount reinforcements?" And the answer is no, because when you die, you are not in range of auras, and that's
Yeah,
why Lord of the
exactly.
Sea doesn't affect that.
Because technically, you use the reinforcement strat after you're destroyed, and
Yeah.
destroyed counts removing the model from the table.
Yeah. Now there is some like weird edge cases where like a tank commander or a hellblaster will still be on the table, like destroyed but not yet removed from the table. Those still
Yeah,
count as being in range of auras, but if there's nothing that
because
interrupts the taking off the table, then you're not on the
yeah,
table. Yeah.
because in the rules the rider says destroyed but not removed because there's you become
Exactly.
destroyed and then you are removed.
All right, cool. We've got that out of the way. Let's go ahead and talk about the
Yeah.
game.
This was by far probably the most intense, great game of Warhammer I've played in a very, very long time.
That's awesome.
Um, it was a nail biter down to the end. Basically, had I been able to hold on to one more resource, I win because I hold an objective and get extend, and that was 10 points,
Oh,
and I lost
yeah.
by 5, and it was basically that. I think there's a bunch of instances. His list shot harder than mine, so
Yeah, it did.
I wasn't go- I was not going to come out and play that game.
Mhm.
So basically, my game was I was going to try and hold my side objective as much as humanly possible,
Mhm.
and that involved killing his 2 chimeras and his 20 catachans without them ever touching my expansion objective, which I did
Mhm. Nice. Good first step.
with. So that play was probably the best first turn I've played in a long time because um, that was Kasrkin jumping out of a chimera to get right next to one of his chimeras,
Mhm.
rushing horses forward, grenading, and then shooting with the Kasrkin to kill the chimera,
Mhm.
charging the horses into the 10 guys that came out of the chimera, piling the other half of the Rough Rider squad into his Hellhound, charging the Kasrkin into the second chimera and wrapping it so they all came out on the other side of the chimera.
Yeah.
Melta-mined the Chimera, almost got it, so it had to take a battle shock test. That was my goal. I didn't quite get there. Could have
Yeah.
rolled the 6 mortal wounds, or just done a little bit of chip damage with the power sword.
Yeah.
And then the Rough Riders, in their absolute glory, perfectly killed 10 Catachan Jungle Fighters and the Hellhound to the wound.
Wow. And you lost from that
And
position? That's crazy.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But that was turn one because then basically he had control of the firing lanes, which
Yeah.
means then his Aquilons were dropping in move blocking positions from the center.
Mhm.
Um, Also, a big caveat because I had attaches and he didn't. He ended up losing Solar on turn 3 or
Mm-hmm.
4. Um, and so that was my other thing is I wasn't going to take him off middle objective, so I decided I was going to take him off his home objective,
Mm-hmm.
and that plan worked.
Nice.
Um, but I didn't take it. I took him off of it, but didn't take it from him, which would have been nice. And the big thing that came down was I needed Scions to hit a 6-inch charge on turn 3, which they missed, and I needed Leo to hit a 7-inch charge on turn 4, which he missed as well, both with a reroll.
I feel like I've noticed a pattern in the in these games, John. There's just a lot of charges that you're just not quite hitting.
So anytime I like roll dice, I can always go, I can roll a hit. I
Yeah.
always roll a hit really well. I can never roll the wound. I can never roll damage properly,
Hmm.
except in like this in certain one. And like when it happens, I'm like, what is this?
We did it. Yeah.
What is going on? No, this thing is because most of the time I hit my charges, but this is the thing where because he had control of the fire lanes,
Yeah.
the Scions had to. I had to sit Scions out to overwatch the dropping Aquilon so I could actually bring the other Scions around.
Hmm.
And had the Aquilons not been there, it would have been a 1-inch charge. But because the Aquilons
Uh.
were there, it was a 6-inch charge,
Hmm.
and that was basically the game changer.
Yeah.
Because I was going to outscore him on secondaries 100% because it killed everything that wasn't a big gun
Yeah.
and his Scion brick, but that was like in the middle.
Yeah. Makes sense. I mean that. I
Yeah,
mean, it sounds like a very close game overall. I definitely watched a good chunk of it, and I was like, it was interesting to hear from your perspective. Was there anything that you felt that Lennon did better than you, or that you were doing better than Lennon that might have given one of you an edge?
I think he used his ability to control the firing lanes. And actually, the biggest thing was I'm not used to playing on GW terrain, and this was the only game where I felt like I was at a disadvantage because my tank
Uh,
commander got shot in a position where it couldn't shoot back on death because
yeah,
of the way the terrain is set up. Because in WCT terrain, the buildings are always like almost up against the edge of the plate,
yeah,
so you never really come into that circumstance where even if you're sitting on a plate, unless you're like physically like in that situation, it doesn't happen very often because normally you're either behind or there's
yeah,
no building in between.
yeah.
I thought he did a really good job of that on that flank, moving the Hydra to move block the tank commander. Because my
Hmm.
plan was to just yeet the tank commander onto his expansion objective
Yeah,
and just have him get in a firefight with 3 of the other Russes, which was arguably maybe not a good plan, but it was a plan,
it
and
was
I
a
wasn't
plan.
able. It was a plan, and I wasn't able to execute said plan.
Yeah,
So that he definitely played better. He played the angles on the GW board better, but I knew my out was to outscore him on secondaries and keep primary as close to even as possible.
yeah.
And had I scored the 10 at the end, he would have been up 5 on primary, but I would have been up I think like 15 on secondaries
Ooh,
or
that's a
something like
lot.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah, there was like I got off to a really big secondary lead, and I was like, okay, I think I can hold this because I don't think I'm going to hold. He was denying primary better because he was able to drop at the end of game, and I just ran out of resources. And that was the other thing. I think Leo, when you go second, always should be out on turn 5, not on turn 4. But it was because the Scions didn't make their charge, it kind of forced me into, I think, that position.
gotcha. Well, unfortunately, I know you said at the beginning that you felt like you maybe were playing to be the world champion at the beginning of that game, and unfortunately, by the end of it, that's not the world we happen to live in this time. Maybe if one or two
It's
chargers
okay.
gone your way, but at the end of the game, at the end of the day, we're playing a dice game, and so with that,
Yeah.
takes us to our last game where you played against one of the most interesting lists I saw at the WCW in Jesper's Ultramarines Iron Storm. What
Yeah.
happens in this one?
This was crazy. So I played Jesper before, I think like 2 times because I played for the Canadian WTC team
Hmm.
this past year,
Hmm.
and we scrimmed with Sweden a few times. Um, he would never played Marines when he played me.
Hmm.
But it's really interesting. It's a cool idea for a list because basically it's like Gilliman, Calgar, and some what are they called? Company heroes
Hmm.
with like a lone op lieutenant that runs next to Gilliman, so it's like
Double loan up. Yep.
lone op double lone op combo, and then three Vindicators, a Lancer, and three Ballistus Dreadnoughts, and then
Okay.
Scouts and
Yeah.
Infiltrators and stuff like this. But the advantage is like because Gilliman makes strats cheaper,
Hmm.
and Calgar makes gives you CP. You can basically like you can AOC and smoke any vehicle and still use your offensive strats
Yeah.
and still have CP for like a CP reroll every once in a while. I was like, how do you have so he's got like three CP and he's already used like four strats this turn? I'm very confused.
Yeah.
But what he doesn't have is OC.
Yeah.
And we were playing on layout one, and I was like, well, I'm just going to hold two objectives, and you're never going to hold two objectives, and that's
Yeah.
it.
OC good.
And that was OC good.
Yeah.
And that was it. Like I could tell like he had played like this, but I like understood I'm like, okay, when Gilliman comes out, Gilliman needs to die. So Gilliman died to horses. Go
Let's
horses.
go. Horse is good.
Horse is good. And yeah, the that was basically like it was very much in control. Um, I it, like the minute like I denied primary twice,
Yep.
and the minute I was there, I was like, I think I'm ahead on secondaries by like 4 points too. I'm just gonna make sure you can't get a Lancer into a firing lane by dropping Aquilons in front of it, and the Dorn did its thing. This was the game it decided to show up because it overwatched and killed two on in Overwatch. It killed two Vindicators and Gilliman on his second life.
That is a really good door right there. Very impressive stuff coming through. Yeah.
Lethal's real good when the Vindicator like moves in because he has to get within, and you have to make it so that where he moves he has to get within the Melta range, and you
Yeah.
roll two sixes and do 14 damage because you can't AOC in your movement phase.
Yeah. That's wow. I mean, sometimes you can just out tank the Iron Storm, and it is what it is.
Yeah,
Yeah, it sounds like a
yeah.
very controlled win overall. So overall, then you go 7-1, beating your goal of 5-3. End up getting third place at the World Championships. And I guess I gotta ask, how did it feel after you were done playing and realized you were so close, but it's still like this fantastic achievement. What was the feeling walking away from the WCW?
It was great. I was joking with my friend of mine. It's like any tournament's a good tournament where your only loss is to John Lennon.
Yeah,
I'll take it,
yeah, that's fantastic.
100%.
And then,
No, it was great. Like you can't really like, but
mhm,
I'm not gonna sit here and say anything other than I was like super excited, but also like mentally exhausted to the point where
yeah,
I was very much happy of being able to do it and felt like I played really good games of Warhammer, and there was, like even the games that were close, like we, both myself and my opponent, we deserved to win, and then I got 2 points lucky in the games I needed to get 2 points lucky, and the ones that I was in control of, I never lost control of, and
yeah,
always put myself in a place where I played to outs,
yeah.
and it worked out. My
How
next
much?
tournament might be, a GT, and I'll go 3-2 because I'll my outs won't happen.
Yeah, that happens. How much time have you spent since the WCW to like go over the games again in your head, or do you like take pictures or anything in order to like reanalyze the games?
I, the analysis is kind of just like on a continuous basis.
Hmm.
I'm pretty good at doing it all in my head.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I
So.
don't need a whole lot of visual references to it. Like I understand, and I'm very I do it a lot in game where I like, you know, 15 minutes later, I'm like, that was the wrong decision. I think this was the right decision. This is going, and you just kind of say that out loud to yourself, and you hope it like sticks.
Yeah, and then you have to move on because you still have the rest of the game you need to play.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But then you like try and incorporate that into the game you're playing.
yeah.
Whereas like you don't try and make the same, I was playing I played a TTS game against like Black Templars, and I had this whole plan, and then I didn't kill enough Terminators and should have stopped and not charged Rough Riders into them, because then the Terminators killed all the Rough Riders back and went, yeah, that was the wrong things, and then never charged the Terminators again with anything, and went, the two of you can sit on this objective for the rest of the game. I'm not going to bother with you anymore.
Yeah, nice. I love that
That's
self-reflection coming through. Well, we're definitely past an hour, but I got if I can steal a little bit more of your time, I have a fun thing. So first off, thank you for joining the Discord recently. I see you've been active, which has been awesome. Something I did with Robert Moreland, which I kind of forgot to do, is people who are watching these videos have an opportunity to join the Discord as well, but they got to give us a password in order to prove that they actually watch these videos. And John, I want to give you an opportunity here now. What do you want the new password for the Discord to be?
it's got to be Rough Riders, right?
Rough Riders, I love it. Cool. So if you guys send me a message on like Discord or Reddit, wherever you can find me, if you do it on Twitter, if you send a message to my phone, I'll probably be a little concerned about that. But if you send me the password Rough Riders, you can go ahead and join the Discord as well. And John, right now I want to take the last couple of minutes and do a little bit of forward thinking because we have a data slate and a codex and a new detachment right around the corner. So what's the biggest thing you're hoping we get through all of this in the next like month and a half?
Well, I did. Did you see the model previews?
They look fantastic. Yeah.
Well, I will be hobbying for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think I'm going to get my Swift as the wind detachment.
Not this time.
I
Maybe.
don't, I don't think it's going to happen. I would be, it would be very nice. It would be that would be my hope. I don't
Hmm.
think it's going to happen. Um, if I had to guess, I will probably maybe go back to my original roots and play like horses in the Scion detachment. That sounds
Hmm.
like a whole lot of fun. Um, I I think like anything that make you allows you to play guard like dynamically, like even with just like one detachment, we have so many data sheets. It feels like when I was playing against Lennon, it didn't feel like a mirror because we weren't playing the same data sheets.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually
And
really
so
curious then, because like I feel like over the course of the past like year and a half or so, there's been a couple of times where we've seen like homogenization of guard lists, like early
mhm.
in the year when everybody's playing the Nassim Gaylord list, where it's like double Manticore, double Basilisk, triple Tank Commander, Kasrkin, like that was the list that everybody was playing. But I feel like for the past like 6 months, it hasn't been that way. I only feel like over the past like month or so where we've seen like a re-homogenization of lists where you have like I call it guard good stuff. It's like Catachan, Chimeras, Lehman Russes, maybe a Bulgrin, maybe some Scions, right? Like all of this. And then the only other archetype that I see that's been really common has been kind of whole spam with like Hydras, Hellhounds, Russes, maybe a Dorn, and that kind of stuff. But I mean, the fact that you're still bringing this very different style of list is cool. And the point that I want to make about it is I'm kind of curious then, because Lethal Hits is really freaking good. So
Mhm.
I'm kind of curious, like,
100%.
what would it take for you to be pulled to a different detachment? Would you be down to play like a detachment that's maybe a little bit weaker if it's more your style?
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't. I most RTTs I play 50 horses and do no damage and just work on move blocking and scoring points
Yeah.
and how to like movement. I don't know who said it first. I'm sure someone smarter than me. Movement wins games.
Yeah.
So uh, I would trade in lethal hits for +2 move, +1 to charge tomorrow.
Not. I mean, it'd be very, very powerful for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would. I don't know. I would I would trade in lethal hits for a charge after you get out of a transport stratagem, a get back into the transport after you shoot stratagem. Um, I would trade lethal hits for what else would I trade lethal hits for? Dev wounds on Rough Riders
That
or on Death Riders.
That would be exciting. I mean, it sounds like we might be getting
Like
that one.
yeah, I don't know, like
Yeah.
yeah, stuff like that, like stuff where like you can play different archetypes. I joked to my friend that what will probably end up happening is I'll like play horses in the artillery detachment because it'll have like one strat that like isn't supposed to be used on something, but I'll use it on the horses because it will make them go to, instead of being like a 3 out of 10, they go to a 4 out of 10, and that's good enough for me for horses.
Nice. Yeah, I love that when you just have like the units. I kind of want to go back to playing more horses again. It's been a while, so it's been inspiring to listen to how well they've been performing for you.
You just don't expect them to do anything. That's what everyone like. Everyone knows. That's like everyone's like they don't do any damage. I'm like, why do you want them to do damage?
They're so
You don't need them to
fast.
do damage. They're so fast.
They could be
Did you
anywhere you
have
want
you
them to.
seen how fast they move?
15
They move
plus
15,
charge.
and then they charge. And
Yeah,
some most of the time they get 15, and they still hit on twos because ghosts.
let's go. I love order switching guns. Ghosts are so good. All
Yeah,
right.
and then and
Yeah.
that's about it. The Death Riders have reactive moves.
And they have claws.
They have claws, and they're all AP1.
Yeah,
They have they have 50 attacks for the unit on the charge.
that's a lot. It's going to be a lot of fun. Well, John,
Yeah.
is there anywhere that we should be looking out for you in like social media, or do you do any other content creation that we should know about? No. Yeah, any other final
Do
thoughts before I
absolutely
let you go
nothing.
here?
No, thank you very much. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. I like talking Guard, and I like talking Warhammer, so I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure talking to you this whole time. Congratulations again on your third place performance at the WCW, and I'm hoping that we get to see a lot more of you in the next couple of months. Are you on the WTC team again, or has Canada is still in the selection process?
We're still in selection
Still in
process,
selection process. Well,
so I made the whatever the first cut to interviews. So
yeah. Well,
um,
cheering for you.
we'll appreciate it.
All right. Well, with that, then I'll go ahead and close out the episode here. Thank you so much to everybody who has been watching for the past hour and a half. I think this is the longest one of these episodes we've ever done. But thanks again to John for coming
Oh
on.
god, I'm
We'll see
gonna
you guys all next
bore
time.
everybody to death. Great.